Picture a frozen landscape stretching endlessly beneath a pale sky. The cold bites with a sharpness that feels ancient. In this harsh world, the Siberian yurt rose like a quiet revelation. A portable home engineered to withstand blizzards, windstorms, and migrations across unforgiving terrain. Its circular form, flexible lattice frame, and ingenious insulation made it one of humanity's most resilient architectural inventions. Now imagine this. What if the yurt wasn't just a Siberian triumph, but a whisper carried across continents? Thousands of years ago, long before recorded history, people traveled from Northeast Asia into North America across the land bridge known as Beringia. They carried tools, languages, stories, but they also carried something deeper: building knowledge shaped by survival. Knowledge that didn't vanish when they stepped onto new soil, but adapted, blended, and transformed as people encountered new climates and materials. What if the architectural DNA of the Siberian yurt didn't stop at the shore of a vanished land bridge, but reappeared later in the conical strength of the teepee, the domed solidity of the wigwam, and the insulated earth lodges of the plains? This episode isn't about proving a single blueprint traveled unchanged across time. It's about uncovering patterns, shared engineering instincts, parallel solutions to the same brutal winters, and echoes of a circular, portable, sky-opening structure that served as both shelter and symbol. From Siberian nomads to North American hunter-gatherers, we follow a trail of structural ideas shaped by cold, wind, migration, and necessity. And along the way, we reveal how simple principles, circular form, collapsible design, central ventilation, thermal layering, may link homes built worlds apart. If you're fascinated by ancient innovation, survival engineering, and the possibility of architectural lineage across continents, hit subscribe and step into a story thousands of years in the making. Long before the idea of permanent cities existed, the Siberian yurt demonstrated that mobility and durability could coexist inside a single architectural form. At first glance, a yurt looks simple, a circular shelter wrapped in felt. But every element of its design evolved from generations of studying wind, snow, and seasonal movement across vast open terrain. Its circular footprint wasn't decorative, it was strategic. Wind flows around a circle instead of slamming into flat walls, reducing pressure on the structure. This shape also created even heat distribution inside, preventing cold corners and enhancing comfort during long winter nights. The frame, a crisscrossed lattice of flexible wood, provided incredible strength with minimal material. It could bend with storms instead of breaking, absorbing stress the way modern earthquake-resistant buildings do. Insulation was equally innovative. Thick felt made from compressed wool trapped warm air close to the interior, functioning like a natural thermal jacket. In freezing climates, multiple felt layers were added, creating insulation that rivaled the performance of modern synthetic materials. The central smoke hole, positioned at the top, served as both ventilation and a symbolic connection between the household and the sky. It allowed smoke to escape efficiently, prevented moisture buildup, and acted as a stabilizing anchor for the roof poles. But the true genius of the yurt was its portability. A skilled group could dismantle it within hours, load the parts onto pack animals, and rebuild it the same day. This allowed entire communities to migrate with the seasons without sacrificing the comfort and stability of a well-engineered home. The yurt wasn't a tent. It was a moving microarchitecture system, warm, resilient, and perfectly tuned to one of the planet's harshest climates. Thousands of years before snow tunnels, teepees, or longhouses appeared in North America, a slow and steady migration unfolded across a vast subarctic land bridge known as Beringia. This wasn't a narrow walkway. It was a continent-sized corridor of tundra, rivers, and open plains that connected Siberia to Alaska. Families crossed it over generations, not as a single event, but as a gradual movement shaped by climate shifts, animal migrations, and necessity. When people travel, they carry more than tools. They carry ideas. Among those ideas were the principles that made Siberian dwellings so effective. The circular plan that resisted wind, the collapsible frame that enabled migration, the central smoke vent that balanced warmth with airflow, and the understanding that a home didn't need to be massive to be resilient. It needed to be intelligently shaped. No one suggests that migrants transported entire yurts across Beringia. They didn't need to. What crossed with them was knowledge. How to build efficiently in the cold, how to stretch hides or organic fibers over a flexible frame, how to shape a structure so wind flowed around it instead of tearing it apart. As migrants entered Alaska and spread south across the continent, the environment changed dramatically. From treeless tundra to dense forests, from dry plains to humid river valleys. With each new landscape came new materials and challenges. But old architectural instincts didn't disappear. They adapted. Circular living spaces reappeared in wigwams and tool houses. Portable conical structures resurfaced in the plains teepees. Smoke vents persisted in everything from dome lodges to snow shelters. The result wasn't duplication. It was evolution. Beringia didn't just transfer people. It transferred a toolkit of architectural concepts that would echo across Native American dwellings for thousands of years. The circle is one of humanity's oldest architectural shapes. But in cold, windy environments, it's more than aesthetic. It's survival. That's why the round floor plan appears so clearly in Siberian yurts and reappears, transformed but recognizable, in many Native American dwellings across the continent. A circle eliminates weak points. With no corners to trap cold air, heat moves more evenly inside the structure. Wind sweeping across open landscapes has no flat surface to strike, reducing pressure on the exterior. Snow slides naturally along curved outsides instead of piling dangerously in one spot. In deep winter, the circle becomes not just efficient, it becomes essential. Indigenous builders in North America recognized this instinctively. The wigwam, used by tribes across the Northeast and Great Lakes regions, embraced the same principle. A dome-shaped frame formed from bent saplings created a flexible skeleton similar to the latticework of a Siberian yurt. Covered with birch bark, cattail mats, or animal hides, wigwams offered remarkable insulation despite being smaller than yurts. Inside, heat gathered in the center and radiated outward with minimal loss. On the plains, the teepee, though taller and more conical, relied on the same circular footprint. The frame of long poles, tied together at the top, created a wind-deflecting shell that stood firm against relentless gusts rolling across open prairies. The circle gave teepees stability, while the angled walls allowed for portability and smoke control. In the subarctic, rounded caribou hide lodges repeated the pattern again. These structures weren't copies of Siberian yurts. They were echoes, shaped by similar climates, similar needs, and similar engineering logic. The circle became a universal solution not because cultures borrowed blindly, but because the physics of winter demanded it. Wherever wind ruled the landscape, the round home answered with strength. One of the most striking parallels between Siberian yurts and several Native American dwellings is the reliance on flexible structural skeletons. Frames designed not for rigidity, but for movement. In harsh climates, a home that bends is far safer than a home that breaks. The Siberian yurt's lattice wall, known for its accordion-like expandability, provided immense strength with minimal weight. It absorbed the force of strong winds, shifting snow loads, and rapid temperature changes without snapping. Its genius lay in the way individual wooden strips were joined, tight enough to hold shape, loose enough to flex like a living structure. Across the ocean, entirely different building traditions adopted the same logic. In the northeast woodlands, wigwams used bent saplings arranged in overlapping arcs. These saplings behaved like the yurt lattice, bending under pressure rather than resisting it. This flexibility made wigwams perfect for regions with heavy snowfall. The weight didn't crush the structure, it pressed down gently, strengthening the dome instead of destroying it. On the plains, the teepee's long poles formed a tripod-based cone. Though visually different from the circular domes of the yurt and wigwam, teepees were built on the same principle: resilience through elasticity. The poles could sway in extreme wind, minimizing damage. Their arrangement created a natural equilibrium that kept the entire frame stable, even in high gusts. Even subarctic caribou skin lodges used frames that behaved more like springs than rigid beams. The builders understood intuitively: winter landscapes are unforgiving, and a structure must respond like a living organism. These flexible frames weren't accidental inventions. They came from careful observation of how materials behave in cold and wind. They allowed families to build large, stable shelters quickly and take them down just as fast. Across continents, people arrived at the same truth: a home that adapts survives. One of the most compelling architectural parallels between Siberian yurts and many indigenous American dwellings lies directly above the hearth: the central smoke hole. More than a vent, this opening was a precise piece of engineering. The difference between a warm, breathable home and one filled with suffocating smoke. In the Siberian yurt, the smoke hole, or tonneau, sat at the highest point. It released rising smoke efficiently while preserving precious heat. Its position allowed the structure to breathe, pulling in fresh air at ground level and releasing warm, smoke-heavy air upward. The result was a natural convection system that required no chimney, no metal flue, no mechanical aid. This principle, heat rises, smoke follows, fresh air replaces it, traveled not by trail maps, but by necessity. Across North America, the concept reappeared again and again. Wigwams used a small, adjustable opening at the top of the dome. Builders controlled it with layered bark flaps that could pivot depending on wind direction, allowing families to cook inside without filling the space with smoke. Plains teepees elevated this idea into a fully adjustable system. Two flaps, operated by wooden poles, opened and closed like wings, guiding smoke outward even in heavy wind. In earth lodges, massive, insulated structures found in plains and river valley cultures, the central smoke hole doubled as a symbolic and architectural anchor. It allowed for controlled fire use in the depths of winter, supported by a complex airflow created by a recessed entrance that trapped cold air below the living area. These systems weren't identical copies of Siberian designs, but they shared the same underlying logic. A well-placed smoke vent transforms fire from a hazard into the heart of the home. Across eras and continents, people solved the same problem with strikingly similar solutions. Proof that architecture often evolves where human need and natural forces meet. A shelter's strength means little without the ability to retain heat. And in this domain, Siberian and indigenous American builders demonstrated remarkably similar instincts, even with entirely different materials at hand. In Siberia, insulation meant felted wool. Thick mats of pressed fibers created a barrier that trapped warm air inside and repelled cold winds outside. Layer by layer, a yurt could transform into a winter fortress, capable of standing firm in temperatures that froze breath mid-air. Across the ocean, Native American communities encountered vastly different ecosystems. Forests rich with bark, prairies offering hides, wetlands supplying fibrous reeds, and regions of deep soil, perfect for earth construction. Yet their solutions mirrored the logic of Siberian insulation, adapting the principle even when the materials changed. In the Northeast, wigwams were wrapped in birch bark, cattail mats, or woven plant material. Birch bark in particular functioned like a natural thermal shield, lightweight, water-resistant, and excellent at trapping air. On the plains, buffalo hides served as movable insulation panels for teepees. With the hair left on, a hide behaved similarly to wool felt, dense, heat-retaining, and flexible. During brutal winters, Extra layers were added, much like adding thicker felt to a yurt. Then came one of the most impressive parallels: the use of earth as insulation. Earth lodges, used by various plains and river valley cultures, were coated in thick layers of sod and soil. This created thermal mass capable of maintaining a stable interior temperature year-round, similar to how some Siberian winter homes used packed snow or earth mounding for stability and warmth. What emerges is not a single borrowed design, but a shared instinct. Insulation is the first line of defense in cold climates, and nature provides the materials, if you understand how to use them. Both continents arrived at this truth independently, guided by survival and experimentation. One of the strongest architectural echoes between Siberia and ancient America appears not in walls or roofs, but in mobility. In both regions, vast landscapes, shifting seasons, and the demands of hunting required homes that didn't just protect, they traveled. The Siberian yurt excelled at this. Despite its strength, a yurt could be disassembled within hours. Its lattice walls folded like a giant wooden net, roof poles stacked neatly, felt coverings rolled tightly for transport. This mobility wasn't a luxury. It was essential for following herds, relocating to better grazing grounds, or surviving seasonal extremes. Across the ocean, ancient American cultures faced similar pressures. Buffalo migrations shaped life on the plains. Caribou routes dictated movement in the far north. Seasonal fishing, plant harvesting, and winter storms pushed communities to relocate throughout the year. And so, their architecture evolved along the same functional lines. The plains teepee became a masterpiece of mobile engineering. A small household could dismantle a teepee, load the poles onto a travois, and move an entire home in a single day. The structure's cone shape made setup quick, its materials lightweight, and its function perfectly aligned with nomadic life. Like the yurt, it offered weather resilience without sacrificing portability. Farther north, caribou hide lodges and domed skin tents also reflected this balance. Builders developed systems for packing, carrying, and rapidly rebuilding shelters using minimal tools, an echo of the same nomadic demands that shaped Siberian architecture. What connects these innovations is a shared truth. In harsh climates, a home must move with the world, not fight it. Mobility was a survival strategy, not a cultural coincidence. And across continents, people solved the challenge in remarkably parallel ways, creating dwellings that were strong enough to endure storms, yet light enough to follow the rhythms of the land. If Siberia offered one of the coldest laboratories for architectural invention, the Americas offered a vast collection of new testing grounds. Migrating families encountered forests, plains, deserts, wetlands, high mountains, and river valleys. Each landscape demanded adjustments, yet the underlying building instincts they carried remained visible, reshaped but recognizable. The first major shift came from material availability. In Siberia's treeless tundra, homes relied heavily on wool felt and portable wooden frames. But upon reaching the dense forests of the Pacific Northwest or the Great Lakes, migrants found tall saplings, flexible branches, and abundant bark. Portable frames evolved into bent wood domes. Felt coverings transformed into bark sheets and plant fiber mats. The principle stayed constant: light, flexible structures adapted for mobility. But the materials changed with the land. Climate shaped the next evolution. The teepee, for instance, reflects the same mobility-focused logic as the yurt, yet its tall, conical form emerged from the open, wind-prone plains where buffalo migrations ruled life. In contrast, the insulating mass of earth lodges developed in regions with stable settlements and extreme temperature swings, mirroring Siberian winter huts that relied on mounded earth or snow for thermal stability. Even ventilation systems morphed with environment. Woodland wigwams used small, adjustable bark flaps to manage humidity in wet climates. Plains teepees refined smoke control for storm-heavy winds. Subarctic lodges carved vents that balanced heat retention with breathable air in bitter cold. What emerges is not a simple story of copying, but one of architectural adaptation. Ancient knowledge from Siberia didn't survive unchanged. It was filtered through landscapes, transformed by necessity, and rebuilt using materials no Siberian builder ever touched. Across thousands of miles, the architectural instincts of the Old World met the possibilities of the New, creating dwellings perfectly tuned to each environment. Not every similarity between Siberian and indigenous American dwellings requires a migration trail to explain it. In fact, some of the most striking architectural parallels likely arise from a different phenomenon altogether: convergent innovation. When different cultures, facing similar challenges, arrive at comparable solutions. Cold does not care about geography. Wind does not care about ancestry. Snow, storms, and temperature extremes shape human creativity in predictable ways. This explains why the circular floor plan appears across distant cultures. The physics of heat retention, airflow, and wind resistance favor round structures. It's not only the yurt and the wigwam. Similar shapes appear in Sami goatis, Inuit snow domes, and even ancient European roundhouses. The same is true for flexible frames. In any environment where storms can tear rigid structures apart, builders eventually learn that a home must bend to survive. This principle shows up in the yurt's lattice walls, the wigwam's bent saplings, and the pliable frames of subarctic skin tents. Thermal layering follows the same logic. Whether using felted wool in Siberia, birch bark in the northeast, buffalo hides on the plains, or sod over earth lodges, the goal is identical: trap air, reduce heat loss, and create a barrier between the household and the outside world. Central smoke vents, perhaps the most iconic shared feature, appear wherever fire is used indoors without chimneys. The solution is so fundamental that cultures on every continent discovered it independently. These parallels don't diminish the uniqueness of any culture. Instead, they reveal something extraordinary. When humans face the raw forces of nature, they tap into the same universal engineering instincts. Some ideas may have crossed through migration. Others emerged on their own. But together, they form a story of human resilience, a reminder that ancient architects around the world solved similar problems with remarkable creativity. When we step back and look at the yurts of Siberia alongside the teepees, wigwams, and earth lodges of ancient America, something remarkable comes into focus. The connections aren't just structural, they are human. They reveal how people across continents, eras, and climates responded to the same elemental questions. How do we stay warm? How do we stay mobile? How do we build homes that protect us, move with us, and adapt to landscapes that never stop shifting? Some architectural echoes likely traveled across Beringia, carried by families who migrated with memories, techniques, and problem-solving instincts. Those instincts shaped the earliest shelters on American soil. But the story doesn't end with inherited knowledge. As builders encountered forests, grasslands, deserts, and mountains, they reinvented their shelters again and again, proving that cultural transmission and independent innovation often walk hand in hand. This fusion created a continent of dwellings that were perfectly suited to their environments. The teepee's aerodynamic cone for the plains, the wigwam's bark-wrapped dome for the forests, the earth lodge's insulated mass for the river valleys, the snow tunnel's frozen sanctuary for the far north. Each design looks different, yet underneath each one lies a familiar logic: efficiency, mobility, thermal control, and harmony with seasonal rhythms. And when we compare these homes to the Siberian yurt, its portability, its circular strength, its layered insulation, its central vent, we see not coincidence, but architectural resonance. The echoes don't prove a single blueprint traveled unchanged across millennia. Instead, they show how knowledge adapts, evolves, and recurs wherever humans confront the same natural forces. In the end, the link between Siberia and ancient America isn't about imitation. It's about the human capacity to read the land, solve problems, and shape shelter from whatever the world provides.